Okay, welcome everybody to our SPAN EA webinar on how to log intern experience hours on the OAA website. My name is Lulua Al-Kasawat. I am a licensed architect with the OAA. I am also on the OAA Council, and I'm the founding member of SPAN EA. Welcome, everybody. SPAN EA is dedicated to helping newcomers and all professionals go through the licensing process, whether it be architects or engineers or interior designers. Today, we have Sajeda Tawfiq with us, and she's going to talk to us about how to log our hours. Take it from here, Sajeda.
Thanks, Lola. Hi, everybody. My name is Sajeda Al Bdour. I'm an intern architect, hopefully. Not for too long. I just took my exec. I have 4 years of experience in Canada and about like 5 overseas. I'm registered with OAA, but I've been working on multiple projects all over Canada. I finished about 3,030 hours, and the remaining I'll be finishing them in the next couple of months. And I'm hoping to give you this presentation to make it easy for you to understand the entire process behind getting the experience hours that you need and how to record them properly. So the presentation will be focusing more on people who are already registered with the OAA. So if you have any questions about how to get to the IAP, which is Internship in Architecture program, leave that out of the presentation. But in general, it will talk about all the steps that you need to undertake to become licensed or reach the level of the examination. The presentation will be divided onto introduction. We'll talk a little bit about the OAA website, how to actually access it and how to navigate through it, and what type of information you need to sign in. We'll also talk about the one step before logging hours, getting everything ready. It's very important if you're starting your journey right now to keep everything recorded and to keep all the information at hand to make it easy. Like I have talked to a couple of architects that used to take 3 days to record their hours, and another group that would take like 2 hours to record like an entire submission, which would be like 1,000 hours. So it depends on how organized you are and how up to date you are with your information. And then we're going to go directly into logging the hours, which will include all the steps you need to take, step by step, what you're going to do on the website, how long these processes will take. And finally, we'll talk about some tips that you need to do or things you need to be aware of so you avoid mistakes that maybe I've done and other people have done, and a summary, and of course, give you the chance to have questions. So starting with the introduction, all of us, probably interns with OAA, will be under the program Internship in Architecture program. And it's very important at this stage of your licensure to completely understand what this program is, because even in the examination, this document, which is the manual for the IAP, is essential. It shows all the concepts, all the the underlying reasons and let's say experience that are expected from you before you even reach the exam. So the first step before you start thinking about logging hours is understanding what you need to have experience in, because we don't want you to go into an employment where you work for like 3 years just doing drafting, because at the end of the day, you want to become an architect, which is proficient in multiple stages or multiple departments or phases of a project. So to put it blank, the IAP is a very important path for you to move your academic knowledge to the experience in architecture. It's not just the program. It's literally designed in a way that focuses on your experience that you can take into work. And this is very important. Like I've been seeing engineers try and get licensed, and they really focus on academic understanding and pure knowledge of information about whatever engineering department they are, but when it comes to architecture, we're more experience-based because we really get involved in multiple parts of the construction. So take this chance to really, really evaluate your information and your knowledge and try to make it valuable, because that will also help you when it comes to looking for jobs and feeling like a proper architect. The IAP helps you throughout your journey to understand where you are at with your experience and what you need and what you lack. And honestly, I would think of it as a first step to prepare for your exam. So the day you register with OAA, you are starting your study plan for the exam, because it was really, really big and really involved everything. It really matters, as I said, because it creates this connection between whatever we know and whatever we can actually use on the field. And it's important to know that it lists exactly what you need to meet to become a licensed architect. And of course, I left the link for it. The exam covers almost all, well, technically all the provinces, but we're really focusing on OAA right now. So on the Ontario Association of Architects website, you'll find a full-on page that explains everything that you need to know about the internship and architectural program. I'm going to assume that a big portion of you already know that, but we're going to go very, very quickly through the manual, which I really advise to sit down and read and absorb as much as you can. So the manual, which technically is like a Bible for logging your hours. And it starts by having the explanation on the process, how you get registered with the whatever association. It's a general book, but then there's adjustments for specific jurisdictions. So it's going to talk about generally how to get registered and how to get your education evaluated. It also talks about what is the type of education that is required, the CACB, because most of us are international educated or international experienced architects. So we're going to go through that process. But if you're graduating from Canadian universities, they're probably going to skip that. It explained the experience requirements, the 3,720 hours, which is technically 2 years or 3 years, or it could take longer. And it also talks about the examination, which is the exact, and additional requirements depending on which province or which association you're going with. Very specific application procedures. It explains what type of supervising architects you need to be listed under. It also explains what the role of a supervising architect is. I know this is really redundant information. Just take time to read it, because your supervisor might not be doing their role. So you get the right to understand why they are there and why they're important, and you can talk to them and be direct about them, because the internship it's not just a position or an employment. It is literally just preparing you to become an architect, and you need to take advantage of that.
Sajeda, I'm just
Sure.
I'm gonna submit some polls while you're speaking, and
Sure.
so right now I just added a poll about the IAP manual and how their interns find it. So we'll take a few minutes just to for the attendees to fill it up, and then we can proceed. So everyone, if you can fill out the poll that's showing up, and you have 1 minute, and I can Sajda can proceed.
Sure. I'm hoping that almost everybody actually have read the manual before, but if you have not, it's the calling to start reading it and just keeping it on hand whenever you have questions about anything about the IAP program.
We have around 10 attendees, and only 5 responded. Okay, 6, I think there. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll right now. Go ahead. Just keep an eye out on the polls so that we can
Just let me know, because I have 4 screens on. I
Yeah.
jumps between two.
So I'm sharing the results. Can anybody see them? I'm new to this,
Yes,
so
yes. So I can see that almost everybody feels it's easy. You might have issues with how unclear it is. Um, we were going to present that at the end of the presentation, but SPAN is planning on having an entire presentation explaining the IAP and going through it step by step to understand everything. And if you have any questions or comments, it would be better to discuss it at that point. But back to the actual manual, I was just going to go through it very quickly just to show really how easy it is to, well, maybe because I have experience that I feel it's easy, but if you really read through it and go step by step, you would understand what is required from you and what is required from the supervisor and the mentor. And it also explains how you select your mentor, how you change your mentor, the role of the RIC. It also changing employment, which is very important. I had a lot of people having different types of employment. Not everybody has a full-time employment. Not everybody has a part-time. It could be on a contract. It could be, you know, doing some freelancing, which could be a valid experience if it's done under a supervising architect and you have your own mentor. So take a time to read what type of employment is available and the architectural syllabus. It also refers to Appendix B, which we'll talk about in a minute. Pre-graduation, whatever fees you're required, transferring from one jurisdiction to the other. I was looking into that because my employer works in the North, so I need to also get licensed in the Northwest Territory Association, in WTA. So it will be a little bit harder to move your experience hours from one jurisdiction to the other. So make sure if you have that issue with your work or you want to move from one association to the other, that you look at this part and understand your options. They also talk about what is required from the experience, which is the part that we're doing right now, how you're going to document it, how you're gonna, what is the hours that is required? As we said, 3,720 hours, broken down into 1,000 hour submissions. And then they list the required categories, which is very essential for us to understand how many hours is required per category. Unfortunately, I started working and I was very excited that I'm working as an architect that I really did not look at this. And I spent so much time in one department or one category and forgot to look at the rest. And it's fully within your right to talk to your supervisor and ask them to give you more experience hours in a specific department, because that's part of their role. And to do that, you need to know exactly which categories of the design or the project you need to be involved in, and how many hours is required per department, because yeah, I have a hand. Lola?
And also, the OAA has released a guideline for supervisors that outlines how it's the supervisor's responsibility to give the intern as much experience as possible in these categories. So this is something new that wasn't there before, and hopefully that also assists interns in getting the experience that they need.
It should, honestly, because I've heard horror stories about people spending 5 or 6 years just going between the same redundant tasks and not being able to do anything further. And honestly, the minute you register for the OA as an intern, it's not just for getting licensed, it's you're taking this as a part, like you're taking your employment as preparation to become a full-on fledged architect. So don't waste time just doing the same thing all over again without talking to your supervisor. And I was lucky to have a very nice mentor that she always, whenever we met, she made sure to tell me, you're lacking hours in this department. Let me talk to your supervisor if you can't. But I was lucky as well with my supervisor. But there has that, as nice as they are, as much as work as you have in your office, you need to have that conversation. You need to be strong enough to say, hold on, I've been doing a lot of contract administration, I need more programming, I need more business management or stuff like that. And it's completely within your right to ask that from your supervisor and be supported by your mentor. We'll talk more about the categories when we talk about the experiences, but honestly, just make sure you read this to like all of it. And then it explains how when you get the 3,720 hours, you're fully, and you pass your examination, you'll be able to become like fulfilled when it comes to experience hours. Also the variety that you need to have different types of projects, and it also explains that if you have some type of employment that you might not be able to get some experience hours, there's also other options to fill it out. Local knowledge and currency. This part is more about each jurisdiction on its own, and it also refers us to Appendix B. For the manual itself, the two most important appendixes is Appendix A and Appendix B. A, because it's literally the forms and explains all the nitty-gritty information about the experience. And Appendix B is the adaptation for your association. So which is the OAA adaptation, or let's not adaptation, it's more like additional information about the IIP program that really applies to interns in Ontario. International experience, it shows how you can put your international employment. I would talk to the association about international experience because you can divide it into two different types. We can say international experience prior to becoming an intern architect and international experience post becoming an intern architect. And both of them, I think, is treated differently. And fortunately, lately they've been accepting tracking hours before you become an intern, which was not available at my time. And I don't really care about it at this point. So if you have any international experience that you really feel is wasted and would be beneficial for you to get licensed faster, I would recommend you talk to your association. They would be really more than happy to explain exactly how you can submit these and how you can include them in your application. And also the overtime. I did a lot of overtime in my experience, so I was able to finish the 1,000 hours faster. But I don't think they have an issue with that. They would explain about how you cannot finish the 3,700 hours in 1 year. You have to finish it in a minimum 1.5 years. I did a lot of overtime hours, and I was lucky to be able to get experience from different categories as well. But still, I was not able to finish it in 1.5 years. So it makes sense that you cannot just create overtime and just finish it. The observer or a parallel document, which is very helpful for people who cannot get experience directly in one category. You should read that through if you have that situation going on with you. Eligible employment, architectural employment situation, because we can be employed in different situations. It's very important to know if you don't have like a full-time job, it's really important to read that. The CERB, which is the Canadian Experience Record Book, used to be is telling me that they used to have to write everything down and it would take them weeks to fill out the application. So we're lucky people to have it on a website and getting filled out real quick. But it's the CERB, which is the Canadian Experience Record Book, the document that we put exactly which project we worked on, what is the information about that project, and the experience under which category for that specific project. Then it talks about the submission for review. It talks about late submission for experience, which I had to do twice, and I had to pay a penalty, which was $118. You're supposed to finish the 1,000 hours and submit within the first, I think, 4 weeks. I submitted after a year. I was pretty lazy, so don't do it if you value your money and time.
Let's stop at this point. So just to be clear, this is an important point. After how long, like after you have your experience, are you allowed to what's the grace period until you should record your hours, and what's the penalty? Just let's point it out clearly.
I think it's 12 months from the date of the last entry.
12 months. And then
yeah,
after
which
that,
is pretty long, but
it's pretty long.
Yes,
Okay, and there's a penalty of how much? How many dollars?
they Lushmi actually sent you an email and tells you exactly how much it is. It might change. I paid $118 twice because my
Okay.
both submissions were late.
And another
Um,
question is, how many hours of international experience is allowed to be logged in? Because you mentioned logging international
I have a
hours.
friend who actually logged in 3,000 hours at once. So I don't think they have a limit exactly like how the Canadian experience is, because as you can see, instruction to complete the SERP, they tell you that within 900 to 1,000, it's a submission, and then you have to do another submission for them, like for another batch of hours. But for the international experience, I've heard, I had a friend who did it by paper because it was easier for her, and she submitted 3,000 hours, which is very, very nice. And I think she got them approved, and she's just waiting for the interview right now.
So we're getting
So
questions. Sorry. We're getting
I
just
don't see them,
questions.
sorry.
It's okay, I can help you. So we're getting questions about can we submit hours before coming to Canada or before becoming an intern? And the answer is no.
Not really. The answer is not no. The
Before
new
you become an
changes,
intern? No.
yes, that no, just that is the difference. I just said identify your hours before becoming an intern and after becoming an intern. And that is the new changes that happened to the program. The friend that I told you about submitted hours before becoming an intern, and that is considered international experience.
Is anybody experiencing a lag or is it just me? Hello?
Their licensure being like a licensed architect, and
Sajida?
that would have a separate application.
Sajida, I lost you for a while. Can you repeat that? I'm not sure if everybody got that,
Yeah,
but I lost it
Okay,
in the
so
recording because it stopped.
sorry.
Starting from where your friend logged her
Yeah,
international hours
so
before.
that is completely explained in Appendix B. I did actually look at it yesterday. Let the international experience is now split into two types. International experience you gained before becoming an intern, and put the 3,000 lines under before becoming an intern. Even if you're in Canada, and you were not registered with the OAA or whatever association, it's still considered before becoming an intern. And international experience after becoming an intern, because there's a lot of offices in Canada that actually do projects outside, which makes sense, and that is considered Canadian experience but international. So you have to know the difference between two. I would assume the international experience after becoming an intern follows the same SERB application. You submit every 900 to 1,000 hours. You need to be under supervising architect, probably from your own jurisdiction, but you can list whatever country's working on, how much is the budget for it, all these details. We'll talk about it when we jumped into the actual submission. And
Sajida, just to that point, so you're saying they can log them with the OAA before they become an
yes,
intern?
yes, I have a friend who logged 3,000 hours from Saudi Arabia, and she got approved like a month ago. But that person that logs these experience hours have to go through a lot of requirements. One of the hardest one of them is to prove that they were working under a registered architect in the country they were in. And that is including having a full email, contact information, licensure or proof of association registry for that person or that supervisor, and the association will be able to contact them, like the OA will be able to contact them. So she was lucky to have good connections with her previous employer, and she had all of these information, and she put in 3,000 hours. She had more, but she said, I will suffice like 3,000 hours to submit, and she submitted them in one full package. And that's why I said the pre-internship or pre-intern architect position hours, I don't think they have the 1,000 hour limit per submission. And it's really, I didn't do it. So I want to say that this is for sure how it's going to happen. but I've seen it, and that's a very close friend of mine. I actually sat down with her and did the process to write the experience, because part of her experience is that she didn't know how to write exactly what tasks she was involved in, and we were able to adjust her experience, explanation of the experience through multiple resources we're going to talk about later.
But just to make sure, she did not do her CACB from Saudi Arabia, and that's why she's able to
No,
log in her
I
hours.
did that with her. I was with her when she did the CACB. She did it when she was in Canada, and that was way after her experience.
Interesting. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, it's really good to know because a lot of people are going to jump the experience very fast if they were able to prove it. But the thing is, if they were able to prove it. So we're going to jump into Appendix A. I'm going to slightly just go back to the presentation and talk about the importance of Appendix A and Appendix B. Appendix A is very important because it really lists exactly how much hours you need per category and per involvement or phase. And it's really important to look at it. These information is going to be repeated to you over and over again. So it's not really lost if you don't read that appendix, but it's the first step to read. And Appendix B, as I said, over and over again, it's the information detailed about the OAA, where we're going to talk about, let me just get back to the presentation, the manual. So as I said, this is Appendix A, and it literally explains how you're going to write your tasks. And this is very essential. When you write your tasks, or when you write, I did programming, I did site analysis, it shows you exactly what type of wording you're going to need to use. The way they work, the way they do experience in OAA or any association is that, any association is that they follow the book. So to make it easy for you, when you write your experience, try to use vocabulary, try to use sentences, concepts from this document, because it helps a lot. It makes it very easy. You don't have to create like elaborate words about what you did and what you were involved in. Just try to make it simple and concise and to the point. So this is a really important document. It talks about schematic design, engineering integration, cost analysis, and it has real examples of how you're going to say, review various references and text utilizing cost estimate. So it's direct, like you can literally just copy these tasks and just put them in your submission. Unless, of course, you need to do them. Code research, envelope details, all of these phases is listed here. I can't stress how much important it is to really read it. Don't just skim through it like I'm doing. Appendix B, you see that it's not available in the manual, but when you go back to the internship in architecture program, you see that Appendix B is attached here, or you have a link for it here. I was reading through it, so it jumped to different pages, but if you look at the beginning of it, it says Ontario specific guidelines. It starts with very basic ones. What is Appendix B? What is the internship program? The Student Association enrollment, the Student Association and RAC syllabus program, Intern Architects, what is the term of it? Experience, what type of experience you're supposed to use. Enrollment fee, intern architect fee structure, how that's going to be paid out. Leave requests and financial hardships, very, very technical information. This is the part that you really need to spend time on, is new requirements arising out of fair registration practice or legislation. So this is where all your questions might be answered, or, more questions are in place. So this lists exactly what type of currency requirement is no longer geographically restricted. So for example, one requirement that was really annoying is that if you're an OAA intern and you're working in Canada, you still need 940 hours in Ontario. This was very problematic for me. I work with a company, our office is in Ontario, and we should be registered in Ontario, but all our projects is in Northwest Territories and Nunavut. So I was really looking into leaving my office, getting the experience somewhere else, which is the 940 hours in Ontario, and going back to my office because I really like working with them. And this requirement is now gone. This has nothing to do with international experience. It's just geographical requirements. So I'll say that it's needed. And if you don't do that 940 hours, you need to do a self-assessment, which is self-assessment to demonstrate Ontario practice knowledge prior to application for licensure. So now, for me, as said, that's working with TAG, I need to finish my 3,720 hours, and then after, hopefully, exact from the first time, I still have to do the self-assessment. This has nothing to do with international experience. This has part one. And I see a lot of questions in the chat. I'll look at it, in a bit.
We can address them at the end, Sajeda, don't worry.
Sure. And there's also an alternative to direct local experience. They're saying that you can take, if you don't have any experience in Canada, not just Ontario, in Canada, like you registered as an intern. Now we're talking about post-intern international experience, which means you became an OAA intern, you worked with a company that is either in Canada and do projects outside, or you left Canada and went and worked overseas, and you gained international experience. You would need to take the Practice Architectural in Canada online course. I don't have to do that because I'm working in Canada, although not in Ontario, it's in Canada. So does that really clarify the difference between international experience before becoming an intern and international experience after becoming an intern? So this is very important to read and just understand. This is how I understood it because it's somehow related to my case. But if you have any other questions about it, I would really recommend reaching out to SPAN. We have a form at the end of this presentation to, tackle any hard topics that the Appendix B didn't explain. It also shows exactly how the changes or transition periods is happening. This is just they're saying that the total hours are not changing. The experience is still 17 categories, and you still have to take the admission course for the OAA, which is an addition, and you still have to have the licensure exam, which is the exam. There's a full part that talks about mentorship and how you can get mentors. And the supervising architect, it's very important to read through it. What's the role of the supervising architect and what you should expect from them. Employment and experience eligibility. I think they dived more into the type of employment that is available. There's working under governmental or institutional entities. There's Canadian Experience Record Book, where you can get to that. Methods of submission, you can do it by paper or via online. Late submission exchange. I don't know if they see if they actually put the fee, but I know it's $118 for me. Late submission charges. Of course, we already talked about that. At some point, they keep repeating what's already in the IAP, but some information is very specific to the OAA. Periodic assessment forms. Demonstrate competency, maximum experience, description of experience activities, how to explain them, variety of experiences, project.
Sajida, I don't know if everybody else can hear you, but I can't hear you. Are you there?
Where did you lose me? Hello?
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, just to recap, I was talking about Appendix B and what type of information is very important. I would look at the new changes, that page that talks about what changes are going to happen to the experience. requirement between international and local Ontario, local Canadian, or national Canadian. To move forward, because we don't have much time, we're going to talk quickly about the importance of keeping an accurate log of your hours. As I said before, there's specific categories, so make sure that you stay accurate and organized to know that you're not working too much on one category, or you're not working completely on one department and forgetting the rest. So that if you start doing that from day one, you have a log on side. I usually recommend people using the timesheets. It depends on what type of timesheet software your office uses. Our office jumped between two different timesheet softwares, and the first one was very helpful. The second was horrible. So I had to have an Excel sheet and log in my experience, like just a quick explanation. Today, I talked to the engineering team. Today, I worked on envelope details. Today, I had a meeting with a client. So just a quick information that, sparks your memory of what you did or what type of experience you had in that day. As I said, benefit of logging regular hours, avoiding backlogs, because literally you will forget a huge portion of your experience if you don't log it. As we said, the steps should be knowing what type of experience you need, you gain it, you talk to your supervisor. Do not avoid talking to your supervisor. Your supervising architect's role, other than giving you a review about your performance, is that you need to talk to them, telling them what I need, what I don't need, what type of information I'm lacking, what type of experience I need. So this is very important. And then you take all of this information after you talk to your supervisor about it, and then you log it in, and then they're going to have to review it. We're going to talk briefly about the OAA website. I'm not sure if you guys have visited the website, but let's go to the OAA. And as you can see, oaa.ontario.ca. The website is very helpful. It's not just for interns, but it's really helpful to go through it. And then you have the sign-in information. Usually the username is your OAA internship number. And then you're going to go to another main page that will show your name at the top, like your information, some news, member services, careers. But the place we're going to go is transcripts. And let me just zoom in. And you're going to find information about your account, including my account, continuing education, events, communities, and the experience record book. Before this moved to OAA website, it used to be a separate website. So you're very lucky that you don't have to go through that. It was really stupid to go between three websites to get the experience. So I'll salute for them. You'll find information about you, your experience, when you became an intern. You'll find information about your employer, which you'll register. You could have like multiple employers. You could work under multiple people, hopefully not at the same time, but you can add them. You could also add your mentor. My mentor changed work, so I had to update her information because she changed work. And then you'll find your experience record book, which will start by saying the currency. As you can see, I have 0 in Ontario, but it will explain each category, design and construction document, each category, the phases inside it, or let's say the involvement in the project, the required hours, how much approved hours and how much remaining you have, and how much additional hours you have for submission. So as you can see, because I was not very smart to start logging my hours at the beginning, I had 42 hours extra for programming. So I did 42 additional hours that I'm not going to get for anything because I wasted it on programming. I could have told the office, like, I did my part in programming, put me in something else. And we can see category B, construction administration. I did a lot of construction administration. You can see in office, I have 100 hours extra. I should not, well, it's helpful for experience, but it's better to distribute it equally. You'll also find the management. I am lacking a little bit in that department. Hopefully when I get back to work, I'll work on that, and it will show you the total hours required and how much you have left. I have, as you can see, 600 hours left, hopefully. And it will show you the distribution of your experience based on the project types. So each submission will be a submission, including projects, and then experience in each one of these projects. And it will explain to you that you have involvement a lot in assembly. Most of our projects is governmental projects. So we do a lot of assembly types, assembly A2 and A1s. And you can see that I have the least in industrial, the least in research study. We did a lot of research, commercial projects. So it shows you that what type of experience you have and how you can work on balancing that. Sometimes you cannot balance that. It depends on the office that you're working on, but it's a good indication to show you how your experience is evolved, like creating you as an architect. Geographical distribution, where you're working, project types, research study, and then it will show you each submission. This is the entire submission. Each submission, imagine it as a package or an envelope that has projects inside it. And each project will have experiences in different categories. I don't have PA forms. I'm very sorry, I've never had to submit these or issue these, so I'm not very familiar with them. But we're going to talk more in details about the submission. Back to the presentation, I was just showing you exactly where you're going to sign in. Your name, you have to go to the transcripts. We're going to keep that in presentation for future, for people who will access it later. You go to the experience book, you'll find your information here. You go to my experience and you'll see your supervisor name and information. And then getting things ready before you go into the submission. Understanding the categories, as we said, it's very important to try your best to gain the experience you need, not more, not less, at the time that you need it. So focus on design and construction documents. You have 2,800 hours that you need in that department. So make sure that you have somehow of a log, knowing, oh, I worked too much on this, I need more in that. And then how much you need in hours in management and professional practice, how much hours you need in construction administration. So another resource that is very helpful for you to know what type of tasks and what type of activities you need for each of these categories is the Canadian Standard for Competency for Architects. Other than the Appendix A that shows very brief information about it, you can use this link, and it's already the OAA website, and it shows examples of how you should write and explain your experience, which is awesome, because if you use different vocabulary for explaining your experience, you might have wrongly submitted an experience and it will be relocated to somewhere else, which is a problem that happened with me before. But you can see, you can click in programming and you can see examples of how it's written. I believe it's very similar to the Appendix A, but it's worth like looking at it again and seeing how it explains exactly assess information required for schematic design, assess the scheduling implication for construction. So it specifically says what task you need to have. So in general, before you start, it's really important to have, I would say, understand the filing system in your company. We were very lucky that we have a very particular architect that likes to organize everything. So every project will have their own code review in one place. They will have project information in one place. They will have the contract in one place. They will have, like, you can easily navigate between projects knowing what type of project this is, how much the budget was for this project, how many, what is the type of assembly, what is the type of project and what I was involved in. So it's really important to know the project name, location, project scope and phases, building code review matrix because it shows the building type and area and all of the information. So it's easier for you then to jump between drawings or whatnot. And the budget. Our office didn't do cost estimate, so we always get cost estimate from the client, which is the government. And we always have them saved up somewhere. So it was really easy for me and quick to jump between the code review and the budget for that project to pull that information when I wrote my submission. Again, tracking project tasks by categories, putting them, when you do your timesheets, make sure that you include which category it is in. Use the IAP specific language when you describe your tasks. And very important, talk to your supervisor before you submit these hours. Yes, Lulwa?
I just wanted to explain that for those interns who are working, usually as part of your work, you have to record your hours that you worked on each task, regardless if you are submitting them for OAA for this online hours.
Yeah, to get paid.
As part of to get paid as part of logging how many hours was spent on the project and seeing how much budget is left for this project. So your supervisor will always ask you to log your hours. So what Sajid is saying is to make that a double benefit. So it's recorded for the project hours and the budget, and it also goes towards your OAA internship hours.
In a very healthy office, they will actually use the same terminology as the project phases in the IAP. So you will be able to log in, like I worked 10 hours in programming in this day or this week. So it will be easier for you instead of you adding more text to that. But again, it depends on your office, but take that chance to add more information, make it way easier for you.
And many
Sure.
offices have this program like Deltec, or it's a specific program that records hours for budgeting, and this is downloadable, so you can actually download it and as an Excel or as a PDF and then
Yeah.
reuse it for your OAA hours.
In our office, we used Monograph first, and then we jumped into Mosaic, which is two different softwares. I think Mosaic is cheaper, but both of them, you were able to access a lot of details and a lot of reports about the project, how many hours I worked on it, how much the budget was, how much I got paid for it. So it was really informative for you, even as an architect, not just as an experience. So dig deep, talk to your HR manager, talk to your architect, just know what type of logging you have so you can either use it or add more information to it. So log in the hours. So if you have that all information with you, now we go into the direct information, like direct steps on how to log in the hours. And each submission, as I said, imagine it as a package. It has a submission, 1,000 hours, and it has multiple projects, or it could have one project. Like you could be spending all your time. I met somebody who spent 3 years working on one single project in different phases of it, which was easy for her. But I was involved in up to 17 projects at the same time, which was nice and confusing at the same time. So it's not really that good, but you get to add as many projects as you want, but you need those information for it. The project name, scope of work, exactly what type of involvement you had with that project, city, province, Lulwa?
So just because you're talking about what kind of projects, there was a question about do you have to have different types of projects as experience? So like say transit, small building, large building, hospitals, like is that a requirement when
It's
logging
not
the
a
hours?
requirement. I don't think it's a requirement to really work on multiple projects, but it's helpful to have more than one. So if your office offers like one single service for one single type of project, you are really limited on what type of experience or what type of project you're working on. But I think what they're trying to say, it's healthy for you to have, especially at the intern phase, to have that different experience. And that's why they offered the observer role, where you can have the experience just by observing the design or observing these phases, and you're not really directly involved.
Yeah, that's
Lulu.
why before, and this is changed from before. Before, OAA would always email us and say, you need more project types. So interns would have to change offices to get more experience and more project types. So
On that note,
if that requirement has been more lenient now, that's a very good thing.
my mentor works for the House of Commons, and they offer a program for their intern architect employees. It's like an exchange student program where they can switch with an office they can take an intern from them and they can give them the intern on the pretense that they will gain the experience lacking and they will switch back, which is a very healthy type of program. I'm not sure it's offered directly through the OAA or they only offer it through the House of Commons, but you can ask around in your office or in the OAA if there's something offered like that. You can switch positions because it's not easy and it's not healthy to leave an employment that you really like or you're really comfortable with just because of the experience. And in most cases, if you have really good experience in healthcare buildings, you better work on that, not just switch between projects. So yeah, I would recommend just talking to your office manager or the lead architect about this. But I don't believe it's a mandatory thing to have multiple types of projects.
And if in doubt, the OAA will send you an email saying, "Oh, get this experience or get that experience," or you can ask the question. So the
talk to
OAA
them first.
is there to
Talk to
help.
them
Yeah.
first. Yeah, don't waste time just hoping that this experience will get approved because it's not nice to work like for 6 months because usually the 1,000 hours, if you're working like a 37 hours and a half a week, it will take 6 months and a half to finish one submission unless you're doing overtime. But let's say basic, it's 6 months, you wasted like that time and then you find out that that experience might not be approved. So make sure to be on top of your game before you submit. And then we'll talk about budget. Of course, you can use this to add information for projects that are not really project, like research. So you'll be able to do zero gross area because there's no building. You could say like 0 stories, budget is 0, not available. So there's a lot of options for type of projects that are not actually buildings. We did a lot of research study for the CMHC. And you put that under like research and study. So it's really helpful to fill out that information. And then you would be able to see the exact same schedule that we saw at the beginning of the experience book, but for each project. So you would be able to see the categories. It will show how much hours you have, the role description, and you just edit. When you hit edit, you go to, for example, design and construction programming, you put the hours and you put the description. Again, description, make sure you use the same vocabulary that they use in the IAP. It will make your review really easy. And then you just save it. Now, I would really recommend that you refresh the page. It happened to be multiple times that I spent 3 hours just editing every category. And then when I go back and save, I find everything 0. And then I panic that I spent like 3 hours for nothing. It turns out it takes a minute to refresh. So
Sure. So Sajeda, this is where the Canadian Standard of Competency, is this where the competency is filled up in this description?
Moving forward, the verification, before we talk about the verification, I just wanted to show you the actual steps on the website itself because I created a submission as a draft for you guys, and you can see that when you start the submission, you have to put the start date and the end date. That is the information you do. You have to pick up. You can see on the project, I have project 00, which is a project test. If I click on it, it will take me to that specific project. And you can see I added 15 hours in programming, so I can edit it. I copied exactly the same wording in the IOP. And you just, of course, edit it to fit what type of experience you have. And then I saved it. And each time you add hours and you add description, it will just pile up and say the subtotal, how much for the category A, subtotal, how much is for category B. Management, it would be like, depending on type of project you worked. I had some submissions. Again, I worked on 17 projects in one submission. One of these projects, I only did 3 hours. I adjusted the site plan for one of the interns that were missing or like on site that day. So it would be like an entire submission, but we'll have just 15 hours construction administration or construction drawings. So it doesn't mean like you have to fill all of these, of course, because each project you worked on one phase or not, or you worked on it from beginning to end. I had these type of projects that I started with programming, ended with warranty. So I would fill it out and it would have like 1,000 experience hours for that specific project. But I had also these small, tiny projects where I did just management, or I had meetings all the time, or I had coordination with electrical and mechanical. We have an in-house mechanical electrical team, so we talk a lot. So I use that as experience. And of course, you can delete project and you can add in. So I hope this explains how you put the hours. Really, it's pretty simple if you know what you have done in the office. I wanted to talk more about like the last couple of slides. I wanted to talk more about the verification process because some people don't know what's going to happen after I hit submit. After I say I approve and I hit submit, the first step is that it goes to your supervisor. You get an email to your supervisor that your intern has submitted hours. Make sure to talk to them. I made that mistake of submitting and not talking to my supervisor, and she missed my submission for a month and a half. And I kept saying, like, she didn't see it. Maybe she saw it. She's taking time to look at it. And it was really a waste of time for me because if I knew that she missed or it went to her spam, I would, just make sure to nudge her and say, hey, I just submitted. Can you please look at my review? Some architects would like to sit down with you and go through that experience if they don't really work with you directly. Because if you're working with a big office, you would have to, be directly under your supervising architect. And then after the supervisor approval, which depends on how fast they are, it would be done in 1 day or 3 weeks. It would go to your mentor. My mentor made sure to sit down with me each time I ask her or I tell her that I had a submission. She would book a meeting with me virtual and sit down and tell me, what did you do? Did you know that you're lacking this experience? How about you talk to your your employer to do a lot of site visits? It was really tricky for me to do site visits because our project is up in the north. I had to fly in to Nunavut when I was 6 months pregnant just to gain the last experience hours, which I'm very lucky that my employer put in the effort to fly me north. But site hours is very hard to get. So make sure that you talk to them on like a regular basis. I just heard that Ontario, like the OAA, offers site experience through site visits to various projects, even though you're not involved in it, which is very awesome. Just Google it or check it out. It was very nice,
It's through
honestly.
through the societies of architects, so
Yes.
TSA or if you don't live in Toronto, you live in the GTA or
I live in Ottawa.
each
ORSA offered something like that in Architectural
exactly,
Week,
yeah.
and
So
it was
each
awesome.
so make sure to either join the society where you are or at least subscribe to their newsletter and attend their functions.
My baby's a little bit sleepy. Okay, we'll try to dive through it. So after the mentor review, you go into the OA review confirmation, which took me each time 2 to 3 weeks. I don't think they went over the 3 weeks. This review is what is really essential, and this is where I had most of my problems, is that they go deep into what is the category of the project, what is the category of the skill, or what type of task that you had. They will move some of your experience from one category to the other if they're not convinced. That is why I'm specifically saying look at the Canadian Experience Handbook and the IAP Appendix A to make sure that you use the correct terminology for the experience that you had for the specific category, so you don't lose that experience and get moved into something else. They also have specific requirements for the assembly type, or it's not the assembly, like the type of project that you worked on. So make sure you read that in the Appendix B. And if you have any information, you talk to them. I know it's one person, it's Lashmi. I added their information at the end of this presentation because I had to talk to them most of the time. So they are the reviewer and they deal with the internship hours and logging it and accepting it and approving it. And you get an email saying that your hours have been approved and you move forward to the next submission. I know that you can do multiple submissions even though the first one was not approved yet. So if you had experience build up and you want to pay the fee and you want to do multiple submissions, that should be fine. But of course, it will take longer to get processed. And the final tips and summary, as we said, track hours when you can, organize all the documentation you need beforehand, or at least understand the filing structure of your office to locate the building code analysis, the budgeting. Get clarifications and ask the OA answers. They're very, like I called them, I think once on the phone, and they were very sweet. Like they would answer anything you want. I had a call with the OAA department, like the internship department, and I had a very stupid question. But she took the time to just go ask supervisor, ask a consultant, and then come back to me, which was very nice and very helpful. Make sure that your supervisor knows that you submitted, your mentor knows that you submitted, because those people might delay your review. And again, the supervisor and mentor review and talk to them before you submit, because they should know that you submitted these hours for them. Last thing, I just wanted to say that there's, based on Lulwa, there's upcoming presentations and topics that we're working on. The first one would be the exact, probably none of you had the exact yet because you're still logging your experience. But if you know anybody or you know anyone that had the exact, they're planning on having people's review and comments on the exam. And you can add in information and questions in the form here. We'll post the presentation so you can access it there. And there's also another presentation about the IAP, navigating Appendix B, which is the OAA licensure path. If you had any questions on it, it sounds a little bit confusing to some people. It has a lot of information more than the IAP manual, so you can add your questions there.
Just to touch on that slide, Sajida, some people, they take the exams and they still are logging hours. So so it's not that if you're not logging hours, you can't take the exam. So some of the interns, they have enough hours to do the exams, but they don't have all the hours, so they have to keep, getting those hours.
Sure. I still have that hour, so probably I'll do like access that link and add my comments to it, because there's a lot I can add on an exam. Oh, sorry, I did a little bit grumpy. There's nothing. Walk a bit time. Last thing was about the questions. I had a question. I received a question from you guys about including the new changes to the reporting experience. As I said,
intern.
yes, the smallest intern. So the changes really don't affect your experience hours. It's more about your currency, which means how many hours you need in Canada and in Ontario specifically. So I don't think it's affecting much the submission itself or the process. The only thing I would note is that my friends who did the international experience pre-internship, they did it paper-based. They liked the paper-based better. They thought it was easier than the online. I personally think the online is easier because you can access all the information in one place and you can track how many hours you put. But yeah, that's the only change. I would again recommend talking to Lashmi Olivier, I think, and that's his information and email. That is the person I've been talking to since 3 years, and I probably think that's the only person working on the internship program. And if you have any question, he responds very quickly and is very helpful. And open OA questions. Anybody has questions for me?
Let me start with the questions that were written on the chat. Okay. So our first question, some of them have been answered through your presentation, but we'll go over them one more time.
Sure.
So the first question was, can you submit hours before becoming an intern within Canada?
As we said, yes.
And you said yes.
That's the tricky one. I believe we talked to the OAA a while back. It's funny, but if you have experience in Canada before becoming an intern, you cannot submit that. But if it's an experience outside Canada, it's considered international experience, you can submit it. I don't know if anybody did the trick of submitting Canadian experience as international, but it was really frustrating that when we asked, they said no. I'm not sure if they're going to change that at this point, but
They are not, because
Canadian,
the
yeah,
only
sorry.
the only hours that are accepted before becoming an intern is if you are doing a master degree and you have been working during your studying periods, you're allowed to log in some specific amount of hours, or if you have international experience. But before becoming,
International, yeah.
yeah, but if you're working in an office in Canada and you're not an intern, you are not allowed to log those hours. And maybe that's something we can bring up
Yeah,
to
we
the
should,
OAA.
because I know a lot of people that have over 5 years of experience, they were not able to log in. Uh, how about to
Okay, so
register?
the next question is somebody's asking, what do you mean by programming?
That would be like creating a program, like how many rooms are per for the building. If you really want to know programming and all the phases for a project, it's really helpful to check the Canadian Handbook of Practice, which is also the second book you need for the exam. It really explains every single phase of a project. And that will be easier for you to understand what really programming is, because even in the book, the Canadian Handbook of Practice, they explain that programming could mean multiple things for multiple professions. But in general, when we say programming is what's in the building, how many rooms, what is the size of the rooms, what's the relationship between them. It's technically functional programming.
So the next question is there a requirement to work hours in diverse projects? And what if I'm working on a single type of project? So as we mentioned, it's better experience if you are able to work on multiple kinds of projects and diverse projects. However, if your company only works on one type of project, the OA will not, I mean, we'll
They're
take
not
that
going to
into
persecute you for
consideration
it.
and they will not persecute you. Yeah.
Because there's people who work in a single office that they only do pre-design or like the yeah pre-design, sorry,
But like
pre-schematic phases. So
yeah,
you can't request
my personal advice is that if you've been in a place for a long time and you're not learning something new, then you should change and look for something more challenging and that gives you more experience. And usually, once you have gained experience, you will get a higher
yes.
salary when you move from one company to a company. So
Yeah,
don't be afraid to move. It's very exciting and it gives you a diverse type of experience that you
that
will
is
not
true.
gain if you don't move.
A healthy job hopping, they call it job jumping or something, is when you're moving between one work to the other just to gain the proper experience that you need. That's why I'm saying make sure you don't work too much on a category you don't need, because before becoming an architect, your experience should be varied and wide and should cover everything. Once you become an architect, it's fine to be a specialized architect. It's fine to find your niche or the type of project that you're really good at, decide you want to become a project manager or type of architect. At that time, you have that luxury. But before, make sure that you are exposed to as many and as diverse projects as you can.
Right. So somebody's saying, Najwa is saying, I have 20 years of experience outside of Canada. How can this help me?
It depends if you can reach out to your supervisor or your previous employer and get the information needed. If you can, then go ahead and work on submitting those international hours. I had experience before and I had good relationships with my employer, but I personally felt that I needed the Canadian experience more. Type of construction here is different, type of project delivery is different. Even if I had experience before, I didn't feel it's going to make that much difference for me. Again, I feel lucky and blessed to be able to work with the company I'm working with right now. I didn't feel like having the license faster is really detrimental for me. That's why I didn't go for it. But if you want, and if it helps a lot and it speeds up your process to get licensed, go for it. You just need that information. You just need to have access to or stay in touch or have a good relationship with your employer before, and they'll be able to submit like proof of, I think they even need business registry and stuff that are really private for a company to share. So if you can't get that from your previous employer, it will be really hard to submit.
Someone is asking, is there a maximum number of submissions per year? I recall you said paying for the second submission.
The logical submissions would be 2 per year because they say that you cannot finish within 1 year and a half. So if each submission is 1,000 hours, you cannot do more than 1,000 hour in 6 months. So I would assume like if you squeeze and do a lot of overwork, it would need at least 2 or 3 submissions to cover all the hours. No, actually 3 or 4. So I would say 2 submissions maximum a year.
Okay, and what else? I'm just looking at the questions. Somebody was asking. Okay, anybody else has a question? I think somebody was asking about. I lost all the questions.
I saw Rana's comment about the reviewer added to work on diverse projects. I think they put that for almost everybody, so don't panic because you see it. Try. Some people might be able to work on different projects, but don't sweat over it if you can't, if your employer does not offer that diversity.
So we have here Harsh Patel is asking, can he lodge intern architect experience that was 1 year, and after that I was a licensed architect practice 1 year, and submit both hours like full 2 years. So the question is not very clear. Harsh, if you can come on and tell us what you had in mind, that would be great.
Yeah, so my question was, so I was interning with the architectural firm for a 1 year. So we have a 1 year intern course as 5 years of degree, and after that I promoted to the junior architect in the same firm. So can the both can be added to that experience, like the intern architect experience as well as the junior architect experience at the combine?
Sorry, I missed the beginning. Is this like international or in Canada experience?
International.
It wouldn't matter. They would still consider you as an intern. So if you had that experience, you can put it.
Got it. It doesn't matter like.
Yeah, they don't even consider you a licensed architect. Sorry. They don't even consider you a licensed architect overseas because that's why they ask you to have a supervisor, because that is the supervisor that needs to be licensed. Like the person you're working under needs to have proof they're actually an registered architect there. So if you were an intern or a junior or a license, it doesn't matter as long as you're working under a supervising architect. Because I believe that's how they're looking at it. You're working under someone who's actually licensed in your country, not you being licensed, if that makes sense. But you can talk to Lishmi as well to just confirm.
Yeah, I just attended the TSA event 2 days or 3 days back. She was presenting the OAA IAP program that.
I do believe you can combine them into one submission.
Right. And one more question about like I'm recently doing the mentorship program with the HOK Architects in Toronto. So I can pick the same mentor for my intern architect.
Your mentor doesn't change.
No, he's saying he can be a mentor for his interns.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
For my intern architects, but he is not the licensed architect in the firm. So I need to do the.
No, the mentor needs to be a licensed architect in Ontario.
with the OAA.
Because yeah, you need, when you sign them, when you put their information and they get approved, because even your supervisor needs to be an OAA architect and your mentor needs to be an OAA architect, because they take their license number and they approve them. As you can see, when you sign in to your account, they tell you who's your employer and their email and their position and their OAA number and who's your mentor. So they have to be licensed.
Got
And once you become licensed, part of your continued education hours that you need to maintain your licensure, you can get them by becoming a mentor.
perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for that.
No problem.
If anybody has a question, please raise their hand and we can take the question. Anybody? Okay, I had one more poll that I wanted to share with you guys before we
Before
leave.
we do the poll, I see
You see a hand? Okay.
not a hand, it's a
Question?
question for Shaima, saying that she received an email that they're saying they require the 940 hours. So that's just understand that the hours will always be 3,720 hours in total. They're talking about the 940 of them, which called currency, which means from the 3,700 hours, you always need to have at least 900 hours in Ontario and in Canada. That is the one that changed. Now you don't have to stay in Ontario. So just as a clarification. Sorry for the background noise.
Okay, I'm going to share the poll now. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes, and I'm not sure why I don't see the poll. Everybody else, can you see the poll? Hello?
I can see the poll, so probably everybody does. Maybe because you're the host.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. I hope you benefited from this webinar, and thank you, Sajida, for taking the time to prepare this. It was very informative. Please,
I'm glad I could help. I really want to help everybody. So if anybody has specific questions, they can send them to Lulwa, and I'll try to help as much as I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, good luck, everybody. And
We're aiming to have a couple of webinars about any topic like that you guys suggest. So we're working on that. And a survey will come to your emails once we're done. And please take a few minutes to answer the survey questions, because that will help us improve on our webinars and set the next topic. And thank you all for coming, and have a great weekend. Bye.